This stuff with Michigan's wild. Just kind of watched it unfold in silence all throughout the week. Last time you and I spoke was last Thursday. I guess it's been a week now. But Pate State Investigates has been on this, and I think probably one of the worst things for Michigan has been I lost my voice, which gave me a ton of free time on my hands. And when I have free time on my hands, I just start digging. And lo and behold, we got news breaking all over the place. And this time last week, sure enough, we knew who Connor Stallions was. We knew that he had been involved in some sign stealing. But, man, we were talking about him buying tickets to folks for games. We were tracking his Venmo receipts. We weren't looking at the Central Michigan sideline. And I know most of you don't need a refresher on this, but I'll pretend like there's someone out there who only watches this show and it's your only connection to college football. This dude was on the sideline for Central Michigan scouting future Michigan opponents. And I'm not using the word allegedly because I fully believe that's him. Now, Pate State Investigates, which is a brand new investigative unit that was launched about the time I lost my voice last week, trademark pending, had acquired some video, and I posted it right there on my Twitter account for the world to see if you're listening on podcast. That, we believe, is Connor Stallions on the sideline there. This is week one. Week one game kicked off at 7 p.m. This is nearing halftime, and my man's still over there wearing shades, which is your first indication something's wrong. But then if you look closer, there was a blue dot in the top, left-hand corner of those glasses. It's probably recording video down there too. And so not only are you going to the stands to do it, you're just finding your way on the sideline. And a lot of people have had a lot of thoughts about that. And come to find out, there was a call. There was a call last night. Pete Thamel reported late last night, and Bruce Feldman and some others have backed it up today with reporting that the Big Ten coaches finally had enough and got on their respective communicative devices, and they wanted to talk to their leader. They wanted to talk to their commissioner. They wanted to talk to Tony Petiti, and they did. And there was an entire, alleged, according to Pete Thamel, an entire meeting. And then Harbaugh had to hop off because they wanted to talk about Jim Harbaugh. And where else would you talk about someone aside from behind their back? Big believer in that myself. That's how I handle business with Jesse all the time. And so Pete Thamel, put up the quote, by the way, if you have it, Jesse and Colin. So in the Pete Thamel story, there was a whole lot. It's on ESPN.com. But this stood out to me in particular. Quote, according to 5 sources familiar with the call. Notice he didn't say according to 5 coaches on the call. That's left to interpretation. He said, according to 5 sources familiar with the call, a chorus of voices encouraged Petiti to take action against Michigan in a call that was described as both intense and emotional. I bet it was. He continues, collectively, the coaches want the Big Ten to act right now, said a source familiar with the call. Quote, what are we waiting on? We know what happened. So that was the call last night. What you think's going to happen? That's the big question today. I think Bruce Feldman did a really good job with The Athletic today of sort of further gathering and aggregating different opinions from around the Big Ten. Coaches, I told you guys 2 weeks ago, coaches have been willing to talk about this behind the scenes. I've had them talking to me for the better part of 2 weeks about this. They're not going to go on the record. I wouldn't either if I were them in the middle of a season. I think come season's end, you'll probably see a lot more guys willing to put their name behind some of their quotes, or as we call it, going full Narduzzi on you. But right now, they're not going to do that. I told you, I also thought the college football playoff held a really important key in this whole equation. We knew the NCAA wasn't going to do anything in time, and they're not going to do anything in time. I think everyone understood that. So that investigation is ongoing. I told you last week, I said if I were Michigan, I'd be a lot more worried about the Big Ten and the college football playoff, because I wondered what the college football playoff would look at this and think. Well, the college football playoff looked and said, not our problem. Big Ten coaches heard that. And I think that precipitated the phone call last night because they know their last recourse to pop Michigan this year before they benefit and have what many perceive to be ill-gotten gains this year is their own conference. They're doing exactly what I would do. I don't blame any of them. I don't think most of you do either. You have wrongdoing, and you know there's only one entity you can go to, and it happens to be the principal. You go to the principal's office. But I will tell you this. I've talked to a lot of people today about this. I don't think they're going to get what they want. I certainly don't think action's going to be taken. You got to understand, as much as I agree with you guys, as much as I would have done what you did, think about what you're asking now. You're going to essentially the owner of the biggest charter fishing company on the biggest lake in town, and you're telling him something's wrong with the water. We want you to drain this lake. You may be right. He may believe you. He may listen to you. And he may even take some measures to go find what's wrong with the water. But brother, he ain't draining the lake. He's not draining the lake because that hurts his business. Business, by the way, is what this always will be about, because you took a guy out of the television world, like so many are doing these days, and you inserted him as your conference commissioner. And a guy from the TV world is worried about a TV product. And if you harm Michigan, you are harming a TV product. This may not seem right to you. It may not seem just or ethically sound, but I think it just is. Big Ten coaches are right. Big Ten coaches are right to be outraged by it. I told you, I think last Sunday, it's been so long since we talked, I told you I had a bunch of them hitting me up behind the scenes, to where when people were saying publicly, notice how coaches aren't making a big deal about this, I knew to call BS on it. Coaches were making a big deal about it. They are making a big deal about it. Everyone doesn't do this to this degree, at least. It's not legal. Nothing about it's right. So they're right to be outraged. They are right to say it gave them a discernible competitive advantage. They're right to not want to play them. It's not out of fear. People aren't scared of you. At least the Penn States and Ohio States are not scared of you. But at the same time, they're not saying anything you wouldn't say if the shoe were on the Columbus foot or the State College foot. And I think everyone outside of this knows that. But just because you guys are right doesn't mean you're going to get what you want, because I'm right. I think I'm right in saying that you are not going to detrimentally harm a television product when you still got Michigan, Penn State on the docket next week. When you still got Ohio State at Michigan towards the end of the year, you're not harming it. You're just not going to do it. If it does happen, hopefully I'll have more of a voice by then, and I'll come here and I'll eat whatever flavor crow you want to serve me. I wouldn't even have a problem with it. But I'm just telling you, I don't think it's going to happen that way. I'll even say this. Michigan fans have felt like they don't have a voice in this. You guys have had plenty of voice. I've heard you loud and clear. And I'll meet you here. You're outside your mind when you defend this, dude. You're outside your mind when you tell me Jim Harbaugh didn't know or shouldn't have known. That stuff is, you can miss me with all that. You're insane if you truly believe that, or want me to at least. You can believe whatever you want to believe. But Michigan fans do have sort of a misguided leg to stand on here, and I'll tell you why. There's been too much false reporting around this at the outset of it that's given them some anecdotal ammunition to use. It's valid. They're not wrong, guys. They're not wrong when they look back last week and say, hey, where did all those reports about Harbaugh's rescinded contract go? They disappeared because they weren't true. They got it wrong. National media types got it wrong. And they're right to say, hey, what about all these investigative bodies that were physically on campus last week? Whatever came of that? Nothing, because they were wrong. Some of the same folks carrying that same national platform, that same national pen and microphone right now that reported that were wrong. And so when Michigan folks look and say, seems like folks have an axe to grind against us, they're right. When Michigan folks look and say, man, there's certain apparati, plural of apparatus, there's certain apparati here in the national media sphere that seem like they're out to get us, maybe even entire networks that seem like they're not too pleased with us. I don't think you're wrong. I do not think you're wrong. However, I'm the horse with the race blinders on right now. I'm looking at Connor Stallions. I'm looking at the fact that he was an integral part of your operation. I'm looking at the sudden hockey stick effect of your program over the last couple of years when seemingly nothing else changed. I think our buddy Zach Smith had a good point about that the other day, and I know how much you guys in Ann Arbor value his opinion, by the way. You don't have to tell me. I know how much you guys love him. But listen, I had ample free time this week, so I listened to everyone's show, including his, and I thought he made a good point about that. When people look at this year, maybe even last year, no one's looking at this as a legitimate season for Michigan, outside of Michigan. Now, if I was a Michigan fan, I wouldn't much care about that, but I am, I'm doing a national show, maybe Michigan colors behind me right now. I'm doing a national show. You'll never erase the asterisk that's around this season, come what may. If it's allowed to sail, if it's allowed to stand, it'll stand. But it'll stand a lot like, some of the impressive offensive numbers from the early 2000s in Major League Baseball put up by guys still not in the Hall of Fame. You know why they're not in the Hall of Fame. I know why they're not in the Hall of Fame. There is no evidence on a piece of paper that backs up what you and I think. Actually, I'd put them in if it were up to me, but you get the point I'm making. There's nothing you can do about that. Jim Harbaugh, if you're at two, you got to do one of two things. You've either got to tell me that guy is one of the sharpest tools in the drawer, and he runs a first-class operation, and he is sharp and has his hands on every aspect of the operation to make sure it maintains its sharpness, or you got to tell me he's an idiot. Because what you can't do is you can't tell me, no, all the first things were true except he had no clue who this dude was, or if he knew who he was, he had no clue what he was doing, right there in the coach's box on the sideline, in his coordinator's ears. You're not selling me on that. I don't think you're selling most people with a IQ above room temperature, which is the temperature of this water next to me right here. I don't think you're selling anyone on that. So it's kind of a shame all the way around. I don't think there's an easy answer. I know if I was a Big Ten coach, the easy answer would be disqualify him. But if I'm Tony Petitti, I'm not going to be a hypocrite here. I'm telling you. If I were Tony Petitti, it's not that easy. And I would guess he's going to err on the side of what I just suggested. I'm not going to make a move on this. Let me put it this way, in lieu of many, many more damning facts coming out. Now, in the way of new facts coming out, Pate State Investigates is not ready to drop a new bombshell tonight. But Pate State Investigates does have many irons in the fire right now. And I would just ask open-endedly, are we really sure that the Central Michigan State game is the only game that Mr. Stallion's found his way onto the sideline for? I'm not necessarily even talking about games that happened in 2023 either.